Hi, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well this evening. This is the Canadian Foreign Policy Hour, which is a critical look at Canada's role abroad. And coming to you from uh, Jojage, which has long been a meeting place of various First Nations, otherwise known as Montreal. And I think I'll get right to it. We are seeing some of the worst heat waves on record in Western Europe. And I came across an ad on my Twitter account, I believe it was. Global oil and gas demand is growing, and Canadian energy will be needed for decades to come. Why are we trying to cap our biggest export industry? And that advertisement was sponsored by the Canadian Petroleum Association. I don't think they're not called that anymore. I believe they have a new name now. But anyways, the oil industry lobby. Um, and so we're obviously continuing further along in doing everything we can to ensure that the climate crisis deepens. A friend emailed me yesterday or the day before about searching Timber Sycamore, which was the CIA operation to funnel weapons into Syria, began in 2012. A huge, huge operation, billions of dollars to get weapons into the opposition to Assad. And he found that he searched La Presse's a site, and he found no reference to it on La Presse. So I asked him to search other media outlets, and he searched Le Devoir, Journal de Montréal, Globe and Mail, National Post, Toronto Star, and the only mention was one mention in Le Devoir in 2017. So where we're seeing this whole situation play out in Syria, obviously huge numbers have been killed. Israel has bombed once again bombed the defense ministry building and bombed a whole bunch. Just the latest round, but and it seems like the uh, the the sectarian Sunni sectarian government is backing off, sort of conceded to Israel. But that context of the huge U.S. involvement is just doesn't exist in the dominant media. It's just they don't mention the fact that CIA, I believe it was considered like the largest CIA operation in history. I think I saw someone say that somewhere. I don't remember the exact amount in the billions of dollars of weaponry and other support, but it's in the billions. There's a number of stories this week about, in Montreal media at least, about Haitians in the US that are being basically panicking because they're being targeted by Trump. They're being expelled. And the situation in Haiti, of course, is dire. The main airport's not even accessible. And so there's lots of push, of course, for where some people in the Haitian community here are pushing to for the Canadian government to move away from its hostility, the a Third Nation program, and uh, the the uh, uh, the context, of course, I think for Canadian perspective, first of all, just due to the horrors of what the racism against Haitians in Ohio and Trump's attacks and all that is rationale for how Canada, should be. Uh, it's not a safe third country. The U.S. is not for Haitian migrants, but also in the context in Haiti, and but then the broader political context of Canada's role in destabilizing Haiti and bringing Haiti to its current situation gives a further rationale for being welcoming of Haitians who are in the U.S. In this very difficult circumstances they're facing right now. Interesting developments with the Globe and Mail and China. There's a number of stories that were quite sort of shift in tone. There was one story, long story about a Pew Research polling that basically found that now attitudes are similar to the US. So Trump's hostility to Trump has led to much more sympathy for China around the world, including in Canada. And so they discussed that, and they framed it in a sort of, I mean, for the Globe Mail, which has been leading the charge, the anti-China charge. They framed it in a decent way, and then they published this commentary in the business section headlined, "Let's free ourselves of the U.S. and forge closer ties with China." And in this commentary, it says, quote, "The greatest threat to Canadian sovereignty isn't Chinese interference. It's our servility to a U.S. that increasingly treats us as a vassal," which is pretty strong words from the Globe Mail. I mean, this is literally 5 years now of a constant drumbeat, maybe more than that, 7 years even, of Globe Mail reporting that's being kind of like flipped on its head. Uh, and of course, he's right. I completely agree. It's self-evident. It's not. It's abundantly clear that's the case. But for it to get appear in the Globe Mail is quite a shift, and I think a positive one. And there's a couple of other stories, and there was total panic online by these like right-wing commentators about this. And they even there was a whole effort to claim that the Globe had backed away from it, like that the Chinese had hacked them. So it seems like some either right-wing force, I don't know what, kind of created some sort of um, pretense that the Globe had put out a statement backing away from this statement and saying they were like hacked by the Chinese government or whatever. Um, so just to give you a sense of how kind of how much of an uproar there was about this commentary. The U.S., I think it was Stars and Stripes, had an article. The headline was "NATO must be ready for two-front conflict with Russia and China," top U.S. commander in Europe says. And it said they're saying that by 2027, this could be, China could launch a war, and we're going to have to be ready for this fighting with Russia, either in Ukraine or further to the west, and China. I mean, it's just this over the top warmongering. What's NATO supposed to be about? What does it have to do with China? And just this I mean, aggressive militarist, and this is coming from the top U.S. commander in Europe. This is not, some junior official. And but it's this is the whole notion of NATO as a defensive arrangement is not based in reality. When you start talking about NATO in some sort of war with China, it's just completely counter to this North Atlantic notion and the defensive notion. In this context, you have um, you have the Canadian government. Obviously, we talked about the huge military increased spending, but there's a series of articles this week, developments this week that go at different elements of this that are interesting. There's one in the Esprit du Corps, the magazine that um, forgetting his oh, completely blanked on his name. He blurbed my military book. Scott. Anyways, forgetting his name. He says. Or not he said, but in an article published in L'Esprit du Corps, that's hard for the Canadian Forces leadership to accept, and senior leaders still cozy up to their U.S. counterparts as if nothing has happened. A number of retired Canadian generals are either Trump supporters or don't see what he is doing to Canada as a problem. Just basically pointing out, which is pretty clear from their actions, the leadership of the military has not really changed even as Trump threatens to annex Canada, even as they launch all these, tariffs and threats of more tariffs and this and that. And but this is really important, right? The Canadian military is continuing, the entity that's supposed to be defending Canada continues to want to deepen relations with the US. We've gone into that a whole bunch in previous episodes. This week, it came out that the D&D has started construction on the F-35 hangars. So they're supposedly in a review about the F-35, but they've begun a $2 billion process of making air base for these F-35s. So that puts the whole review thing into I think, a clearer picture of it in terms of they don't plan to back away from it. The one thing that Carney has done that's sort of positive in backing away from ties with the US. They continue with all the different deployments. We've detailed those. We've continued with most of the different procurement. One thing that is positive is the F-35. They've decided to have a review. We'll buy the first 18 of the fighter jets, maybe it was 16 or 18, and we're gonna review the rest of them. But the military has done everything they can to undermine that review, and they're going forward with a $2 billion project to prepare for the F-35. So it's pretty clear where they're coming, and that all speaks to the thinking in the leadership, which is just how can we assist the U.S. empire? That's how can we be more integrated? How can we get all the benefits? It's important to point this out. They get all kinds of benefits by being associated with the U.S. empire. They get the prestige of having leading U.S. units and that are often thousands or tens of thousands even Canadian generals doing that. They get the prestige of going in all kinds of international operations. They get prestige of all the top access to all the top equipment when they're doing that. And so it's not just a subservience in an illogical sense from the leadership of the Canadian military. I think that's really important to note. The entity, Canadian military, is one that went from part of the biggest empire, the British, to part of the biggest empire, the US, and they see the world. They've sort of benefited institutionally, individually from being in that special position within these great empires, and so they just continue along, even if their whole supposed raison d'être of defending Canada. Um, when Trump is threatening to annex Canada, obviously defending against the U.S. should be a priority, but that's not their priority. In that context, Defense Minister McGuinty this is political reporting, has quietly removed all of Canada's restrictions on air and missile defense, a potential reversal of a decades-old policy of non-participation in that piece of continental defense. McGuinty's department snuck the change into a press release this week following the minister's first trip to NORAD headquarters in his current role. Uh, and they go into about the argument in favor of doing this will enable Canada to strengthen its defense capabilities and better deter and defend against threats to our country's sovereignty, population, and critical infrastructure. There's no further details about what all this is setting means, but they're clearly setting up to join the Golden Dome, Trump's Golden Dome, and drop. It was always a bit of a facade because the NORAD assisted with U.S. ballistic missile defense, of course, in quotation, because it's about when the U.S. attacks and then will defend after the U.S. attacks. The notion of the U.S. military as being a defensive entity is also something to be seriously questioned, of course. But they're basically the facade of this is being eliminated, and they're going full throttle down that path, and we'll see where where all this exactly goes. There was a piece, it was a big piece in the Globe business section, not really insightful, but just insightful for how significant it was. A 10,000 word, like three or so page, front page of the Globe business section Saturday. Industry prepares for a generational shift in Canadian defense policy. Nothing really particularly interesting in it, but just going over all the companies who are look to benefit from it, the Canadian companies, some of the U.S. branch plants operating in Canada, and just to basically, the economic impact or the corporate benefits that are possible or likely in this with these huge amounts of money going into military spending. Uh, there's a story about Canada looking to get explosive drone boats for the Navy. The Iranians, the Ukrainians have used these to the quite a bit of success against the Russians, and uh, and so the Canadian military is looking at some of these drone boats. Uh, there's a story also in La Presse uh, about the S in ESG, the corporate social responsibility sort of standards, that the S is now for security. And basically, we've talked about there's a bunch of stories about this just after Russia's invasion, about how stocks in so-called defense companies are, which had sometimes been excluded, should I say, from ethical investment fund things, had been increasingly integrated. And this was taking it one step further and saying that these so-called security companies should be explicitly part of like ethical investment funds. Uh, that's the state of militarism shaping our world. Uh, there's a story also in the business. I think it was in the Financial Post. Tax cuts, defense spending threaten triple A rating, so that the big boost in military spending is a threat to Canada's a AAA rating with regards to its debt. There's also a story in Le Devoir, just a kind of a paragraph passing in a Le Devoir story commentary from the lead columnist in Le Devoir, uh, that basically the passage is it's about shutting down a bunch of women's shelters in Montreal, and the toll, and this is you don't it's not really a direct toll that you see, but it has this ripple impact and whatever. And they just she throws in a sentence or two about basically contrasting this to it's a I think $5.5 million. It's a fairly small sum uh, in the scheme of things. In about these cuts, that's what they're saving from doing this. But then she contrasts it to the military spending. And the reason I bring this up is because I think this is something we're going to see more and more, and we should be seeing more and more, right? Because this is about priorities. This is about, what is security, right? Is security having more shelters for battered women? Or is security having more F-35s? I mean, that's at some level, this is what the moral question is, or the security question, if you want to, is, and it's important that it's good to see this kind of contrast in the paper, but we need to do as much as possible to point that out as often as possible. I published a piece today, or this week, should I say, that dealt with some part of this whole question of the military and what it represents, right? There's been a whole bunch of stories. I think we talked about this last week about these, far right forces in the military. More details about this in recent days. And the basic point is, I start off the story with is, does the Conservative Party celebrate feminist and socialist collectives? And if they don't, why is the NDP celebrating the military? Right? What the Conservatives don't celebrate institutions that undercut their political power. The NDP is willing to do that with the military. And ultimately, the military is authoritarian, it's patriarchal, it's racist, it's inherently authoritarian. You can argue it may not be inherently racist, it has a very deep racist history. And to the extent that it's a colonial imperial force, it's of course that's racist. You could argue that the Canadian military could become non-racist, uh, and you could even argue that it could become non-patriarchal. That one I think is even harder than the racism argument. But you can't. To me, it's basically inherently authoritarian. And then to be fair to the military, now the demands of war I think are in that sense, they are authoritarian. They are about, following orders and sort of certain discipline and all that stuff. Um, but so, you can, that's not to say you can't, that, that the need for that institution in some contexts would supersede the negative uh, cultural ethos of authoritarianism that I think isn't generally a negative. But in the Canadian military is not about defense, so that argument is kind of left out. But the point being here is that why would progressives celebrate an institution that's upholds values that contradict what are their stated values, and that as an institutional force undercuts their political power or position? And we know why I think we know why the NDP does it. And in the story, I talk about how Heather McPherson, who's leading candidate in the NDP leadership race, quote her a couple times, and there's other quotes out there of her just celebrating the military, this great institution, Military Day, Remembrance Day, June 1st is the recent one, Military Day, whatever it's called, and so trying to get standing within the establishment. That's why you laud that's why somebody who's stated, would be against sexism, would be against racism, would be against authoritarianism, would still laud the military because you're trying to strengthen your standing within the with dominant media, within the dominant power structure, etc. And I should note that McPherson, I've mentioned, I've shown a whole bunch of her stuff on NATO, China, all kinds of different foreign policy issues. But she actually went to she attended the Trilateral Commission in 2022, which is a heavily CIA influenced elite U.S. Talk shop, and just a sense of Heather McPherson's standing, or how she sees herself within the sort of global U.S. empire power structure. Now, shifting to Palestine, I mean, it's just horrible, horrible, horrible. We see so much horror. There's been so much horror that's come out of the past 21 months, and this seems to be even topping it today. They attacked an elementary school. It's just so sickening. The starvation is just mind-numbing what Israel's doing, and it, yeah, it's very traumatizing to watch all of this. One thing I saw said that 89% of buildings in Rafah, 84% of buildings in northern Gaza have been destroyed. When the US nuked Hiroshima, it destroyed 67% of the buildings and 40% in Nagasaki. I've seen things saying about, is it four or six nuclear bombs that have been dropped equivalent on Gaza? The level of destruction is just absolutely mind-numbing, and it continues. Uh, Today, Canada joined 25 countries, France, Japan, UK, calling to put an immediate end to the war in Gaza. The war, yeah. Obviously statements that the language is a bit stronger than previous statements. I don't, strong declarations are better than not strong declarations. The stronger the language, the better. All that. Obviously, words are pretty close. I wouldn't say meaningless, but words are not. Obviously, there needs to be action. I posted a leaflet that we're doing for the NDP campaign with 10 things that Canada can do. It's quite a nice, I think it's quite a nice leaflet. It has a mix of substance to it, and fairly decent layout and stuff. And these are just things. There's many, many more things they could do. These are 10 things that are, they're not outside of the bounds of treatment of every other country. They're mostly fit within upholding Canadian law, and should be done, of course, should have been done much before Israel's Holocaust in Gaza. Uh, but obviously they expose the bankruptcy of the words of Anita Anand. And even in this, like this week, it came out that Macron, Reuters story says Macron has faced resistance from allies such as Britain and Canada over his push for the recognition of a Palestinian state. So 147 countries have endorsed the Palestinian state. It's a complicated how good this is and whatever, but I think it's a small step in a positive direction. And Canada's behind the scenes, Canada's undercutting this move by France. Um, the Maple had a story this week about Canada's defense attaché being briefed by Israeli academic who compared Palestinians to, quote, cockroaches. So this is the people that Canada's defense attaché are meeting with in Israel. Now, to be fair to Canada's defense attaché, these types of attitudes are pretty widespread in Israel. So if you start meeting with Israeli officials or prominent academics, you're invariably going to, meet with these racist fanatics. But nonetheless, imagine if Canadian defense attaché somewhere else was meeting with prominent academics that called whoever cockroaches. It's just it reflects how aligned how we are with this just utter racist horror that Israel's committing. Jews Say No to Genocide is being threatened with a suit from the Lawfare Project for some of their criticism of this the group who brought the Nova expedition to Toronto. There's a story or post about the Canadian Bar Association. There was an attempt to pass a Palestine resolution. Some sort of very mainstreamy broad resolution was crafted, and then they still blocked it. This week, Deborah Lyons, the special envoy to promote Israel's Holocaust, she retired 3 months early. We don't really know why she retired. It's good that she retired. Lyons, of course, hosted that pizza party for Canadians fighting in the Israeli military back in January. She was selected by Erwin Kotler, who's the one who convinced Trudeau to create this position. He selected her. He wanted a non-Jewish person in that position, and Lyons was the person. So she really oversaw it going from a special envoy to promote Israeli apartheid to special envoy to promote Israel's genocide to special envoy to promote Israel's Holocaust. And it's uh, it's interesting. This week, she released a report on the supposed rise of anti-Semitism in uh, in Ontario schools, and it had a picture of the front page of it is a keffiyeh on a chair. That's the image of the rise of anti-Semitism in Ontario schools. Um, IJV put out an action alert on this issue. I don't agree with it at all. It says Canadian Jews have a simple request for the Minister of Canadian Heritage: take anti-Semitism seriously. That means cutting ties with IHRA, which has been widely denounced as unfit for fighting anti-Semitism, and appointing an actual expert on fighting anti-Semitism within an anti-racist and anti-oppressive framework. I don't. This is not. This is a denial of what this position is. This position was never set up to fight anti-Semitism. This position was set up to promote apartheid. Erwin Kotler pushed Trudeau for this. There's no good faith here. This is not, and we shouldn't pretend otherwise. This is just an anti-Palestinian position. And if you think it through, right? Like, why would there be a special envoy on anti-Semitism before there would be a special envoy on anti-Black racism? Why wouldn't there be a special envoy on anti-Indigenous racism? Right? You start thinking this stuff through a bit, and you outside of the box, and it just doesn't hold up. Now, because they set up a special position on anti-Semitism, then there was a special envoy on Islamophobia established. Obviously, that position is much more warranted because the problem of Islamophobia is a much greater problem in our society than the problem of anti-Semitism. There is a problem there, but it's so wildly politicized and distorted that I don't see how you get out of the box. This envoy position was set up to promote apartheid. It's been used to promote a Holocaust. It needs to disappear. I don't think like I get that that's an awkward position for IJV, but I don't see how you get around that. So the notion that you would state like I can you could put out demand that called for someone I saw online suggested Gabor Mate the next envoy. I don't know if Gabor was into doing it, but that would be an interesting campaign to his name is a very high profile. Obviously Jewish. Obviously he's an actual Holocaust survivor. There'd be all kinds of so I can see IJV doing that and that making sense, and I can see, but the notion of coming out with the statement says it starts with Canadian Jews have a simple request from Minister of Canadian Heritage: take anti-Semitism seriously. That's like you're reinforcing a dynamic that I just don't see how that's progressive in the here and now. I get that you can't, they might not be in a position where you can come out and say abolish the position. So I can sort of get that, but you have to get around the box. In my opinion, you have to get around the box that's been created on all this. Uh, I of course believe the right position is just abolish the position, but you certainly don't want to reinforce the and I think their statement comes too close to that to reinforce the underlying claim of the position. This week, Canadian Jewish News withdrew a podcast with some guests from the Institute for the Study of Global Anti-Semitism and Policy, and in the person said, "quote Canadians need to be proud to be called Islamophobic." So the CJN crossed the line that they felt then they had to withdraw if they got criticized. Uh, I've been criticizing the CJN. I mean, I published this piece back in 2016 where I quote their racism, open racism about Muslims and Arabs at Concordia. And I got a huge attacks for this piece that went into how racist the Canadian Jewish News is. The Maple, the who did the Find IDF Soldiers list of Canadians fighting in the Israeli military. The Maple, there was a push to take them offline months ago when that site they posted that site, and they just reported that the RCMP investigated them. David Maastricht, who's the main person who did the database, which I believe is 165 Canadians. And there's a story this week, and it's obviously odious that the police would investigate. The fact that someone complained to the police, I mean, you can't stop people complaining. The police should have just saw that and ha ha ha, thrown it out. But they actually launched some degree of an investigation. They concluded there was nothing there, but nonetheless, uh, they launched an investigation and I guess put his name into the databases according to the Maastricht's thing. They 25 different policing databases. I don't know exactly how it works, but I guess once you start doing an investigation, then the name can appear in those databases or something to that effect. Now, the Times of Israel yesterday published this piece uh, about how Canadians fighting in the Israeli military are basically scared to come home. And because of this investigation, because of the Find IDF website, and then because of an investigation that the RCMP supposedly launched, it's obviously a good story. This in a bunch of interesting details. It's good to think that they're scared. It's important that there's fear among Canadians who go participate in the Holocaust in Gaza. I posted that it's remarkable. There's been basically no attention to Canada's War Crimes and Crimes Against Humanity Act from the NDP, from the media, or even from most of Palestine Solidarity. CJPME's done a bit. on this, did a good letter January 2004, 2024, and they've done some subsequent. We've done a bit. CFPI, JPA's done some action alerts in support of the fined IDF soldiers. I've written a little bit about it. I've asked a few politicians about it, but it's basically nothing. Like nothing, basically nothing from the NDP and most of the Palestine world. And still, they're freaking out. And so if we were able actually getting some real political pressure both on the RCMP to investigate seriously and just general, media pressure and political pressure raising the issue. Imagine the level of freakout among those fighting in Israel or the family members or the whole network of those who are inducing Canadians to join the Israeli military in contravention of the Foreign Enlistment Act. On Tuesday, was it Thursday? There was a rally as part of a day of action at the here in Montreal was at the Complexe Guy Favreau around this the family reunification and how few Palestinians from Gaza have been able to come to Canada on their visas. It wasn't very big. It was about 25, 30, I think it was here in Montreal. There was pickets in about six or seven, at least six or seven other cities on that. The Giller Prize is asking for $5 billion from the federal government, I believe, over 3 years, because of the campaigning of with the Elbit Systems, Scotiabank, big sponsor involvement, Elbit Systems, and also the Giller Prize Association with the Israeli Foundation. And there's a bit of a brouhaha about the Giller Prize. I think that all that campaigning has been very good, very successful. The Caisse de dépôt here in Montreal or in Quebec, there've been a number of stories. The Albanese's report there 10 days ago. I remember exactly when it was, and where they cite the Caisse de dépôt, which is the pension fund. It got a lot of media attention, but there's been a whole bunch of the head of the case had wrote a column in La Presse, and then a group of different figures, academics, I think 100 of them, 125, something that had another column on the issue. So it's getting a lot of pressure on the case, which is good. And the case is now openly stating that they've made no new investments in Israel. And they still the main issue is that they invested all these companies that providing the weapons to Israel and stuff like that. But the fact that they're even publicly saying no new investments in Israel, that in of itself is a positive, of course. Uh, Now this week, the prosecution dropped the charges for Dahlia Kurtz against me, which was a bit of a victory, the two charges. And I sort of expected this was going to happen. Obviously, these were just a total joke, being charged for responding to this racist, violence promoting social media influencer. And so that was good. They're keeping the charges that I of course spent 5 days in jail to defeat the conditions that would have restricted my ability to mention her name. And I say that I think that one of the reasons for dropping charges is because I continued to write about her and I kept exposing her racism, kept exposing just how unhinged and ridiculous she was and is and continues to be. And so I think that's an interesting, that's somewhat interesting politically that because you keep writing about it, you increase the likelihood they try to restrict you in a way that would have made it more difficult to push back politically on these charges. Anyway, so that's interesting. Now they've kept these four charges about harassing police. So after they announced they were charging me, I then wrote about it and then I called on people to email the police this action alert, and more than 4,000, I think 4,300 or something like that, people emailed the police saying drop the charges uh, on the Dahlia Kurtz thing. And so after that, they then said I was harassing the police and that I was disrupting police work, and they brought in four charges against me for allegedly harassing the police. And so they've decided to keep those charges. So they've come basically, the prosecution's admitted that there's not, the charges don't warrant to be pursued on Dahlia Kurtz, but the charges that come from saying that, calling people to say that, they're continuing. Now, it's totally illogical. It's also, I think, quite dangerous politically. The precedent or the notion that they're making, they're basically saying that you don't have the right to call on the police to drop charges. And I've been involved in dozens of email alert campaigns on all kinds of different fronts, targeting mostly politicians, but also Canada Revenue Agency, including like official emails at the Canada Revenue Agency, including the police. We've done ones on Foreign Enlistment Act, and I believe we did one on, I'm not sure about if I remember correctly, but I think we did one on Sorel as well. I think at least one, but I think two targeting different places. I've personally challenged the head of the RCMP about the Foreign Enlistment Act. So where this line is, and then you ask you a question like, well, why am I the only one being charged? Shouldn't all the 4,300 people who emailed the police, shouldn't they all be charged? If this is like, if the email, like I didn't force anyone to email the police. I just called on people to email the police. Um, so it's a very bizarre logic to it, and then it has quite a negative political implication. I would presume they're going to drop these charges. We've set a one-day trial on November 28th to deal with this. So the Crown is moving forward as if this is real. It seems like a serious abuse of authority and a waste of judicial resources, but they are moving forward on that. Now, on the NDP campaign, high praise from the Canadian Jewish News this week. They had a commentary that was serial activists who make hating Israel their entire identity are a dime a dozen these days. Eve Engler stands out even in that field. Um, and in a more positive direction, there was a column in the Sarnia Observer, and the headline is "The NDP is shrinking, and Eve Engler might be the reset it needs." Now, it sort of basically said that let's open up the debate within the NDP and have go beyond like marketing and branding and have substantive justice-oriented ideas in the discussion, which is a totally sensible position. Noah Zatzman, Noah Zatzman, who was the disgraced former advisor to Annamie Paul, the Green Party, back in 2021, he sends this email, this message to the paper that I received, was given, and he says, "Hello, you've published an endorsement of the notorious anti-Semite Eve Engler. I consider him a borderline neo-Nazi and a danger to the Canadian Jewish community. Engler was in jail a few months ago for 5 days for harassing a Jewish journalist. Endorsement of this hate and incitement towards Jews is unacceptable for the Sarnia Media Group, a recipient of government funding. Would appreciate it if you could remove this very disturbing content immediately. Thanks." So he's calling for them to take this article down. Now, this is both, I don't think they've taken this down. There was a letter actually I saw praising the column. So they haven't taken it down. It's a really dumb position that Zatzman's doing, because even if the first was, do you think they're going to take it down? Secondly, if they did take it down, would that be beneficial to my campaign or hurt my campaign? Probably be beneficial. It would probably lead to a bunch more attention on this article. And so Zatzman, in my opinion, is just acting as a authoritarian, emotional authoritarian a Zionist, and he's not thinking through what he's actually doing. He's just kind of lashing out because he's angry that I played an important role in him being exposed back in 2021. I wrote the column that showed what he'd done in this Facebook group, and it led to that unraveling where ultimately Jenica Atwin left the Green Party, and then Elizabeth May and Paul Manley come out criticizing Annamie Paul, and the Green Party gets kind of Annamie Paul and Zatzman's like hardline anti-Palestinian positions lead to basically her leadership collapsing, and she ends up having to resign. Zatzman gets pushed out, and he's attacked me many times since then. Um, anyway, so he's clearly disturbed by the getting some positive attention. And as you're seeing lots of Zionists, Mayor Weinstein coming at me again, that Brian Paulsamy, the other Toronto Sun, is it Brian? Forget the name. Toronto Sun columnist coming at attacking. So there's ongoing campaigns on that front. Uh, though there's some successes, we're getting some stuff together on the NDP campaign. That's got a very I mentioned the Palestine leaflet, but a series of them getting the committees going, and there's more than 150 people signed up to volunteer, and we're just getting going here. Also, we released a public letter signed by Roger Waters, Linda McQuaig, Sarah Jama, Rabbi Mivaser, Maharar, Sid Ryan, uh, many others. More than 2,400, I think it is, people have emailed the NDP saying don't let genocide advocates decide who can participate in the race, the leadership race. It's a pushback against Brian Lilly, Mayor Weinstein, Selena Robinson, and others saying that I should be excluded from the NDP leadership race. I think that that's the issue that's going to make it polarizing on the question of the genocide. It makes it very difficult for the NDP leadership to block my candidacy amidst the genocide if it's perceived as it's coming from these Zionist fanatics. Now, conversely, of course, if they don't block my leadership bid, the Zionist groups are going to go completely bananas attacking the NDP. They may do that even before we get to that stage, but uh, there we are. I'll leave it at that, and I'll make Laurel a co-host, and yeah, if people have comments or questions or whatever, and people, anybody interested in volunteering, I put it in the link to the in the email, but you can go to the Eve for NDP Leader, and there's a volunteer sign up, and there's the toolkit, and there's going to be more, the campaign kit, should I say. There's going to be more stuff put into that campaign kit in the coming days, in the coming weeks, different things to both share on social media, but also this leaflet, this Palestine leaflet, and we're going to come out with a few more of these leaflets on different issues, but particularly the Palestine leaflet. The aim here is to have people in pretty much every city in the country, every small community, when there's a Palestine demo, Palestine talk, film screening, whatever, bake sale, to bring a few of these leaflets. So we're looking to have people kind of like bottom liners in every community. We've got 50, 60, 70 communities across the country. Have people who, print out 10, 100,000, whatever the size of the community, context is. And then, try to circulate them among a few activists and get them out to the events. And again, the leaflets, like, in and of itself, I think it's good substance. It's something that we should have done, this deepening consciousness of the scope of Canadian complicity. Anyways, but I will make Laura a co-host. I think you are co-host now. And if there's any comments or questions, go ahead.
So can you explain what you want volunteers for? Like, for example, do you want volunteers? Can someone outside the country? Are you looking for just online volunteers to do things, or is it mostly just hands-on in the field?
No, it's everything. I mean, there's a bunch of images, posters and stuff in that campaign kit that we want to share. So, for social media. There's assistance that's needed for. I mean, there's a communications committee, there's a fundraising committee, there is a tour committee, there is a endorsements committee, there's a website committee, there's a policy committee, and there can be more committees set up with time, depending on how much, how serious the campaign gets, how many people there are. So there's all these different committees that if you have, that most of it will be virtual work. So if there's skills or interests or whatever that you can plug into, you can do that. Some of it is on the ground, in terms of specifically around this Palestine. I think one of the main ways of getting thousands of people to become NDP members to vote for my candidacy is that if we have a big operation in all the Palestine networking across the country, uh, that's the fertile territory to get people. And I would obviously like to do that not just as like vote for Eve, but like in a substance way where the leaflet being handed out is not, if people don't interact with the campaign at all, but they still are left with, oh, hey, there's 10 different ways, 10 important ways Canada's complicit in Israel's genocide. Maybe I knew five of those and didn't know the other five, or if, whatever, right? So, and that's what the leaflet does. I should also note one of the other things. So I think that like the terrain, I mean, there's so many issues, of course, that any leadership campaign needs to engage with. But the other big issue, so the Palestine thing, I think, is where there's lots of activism happening, and we should, become involved in terms of that, and bring people involved in that into also, some attention on the leadership campaign. The other issue that is central to my campaign is the whole big picture thing on military spending and a view that there's going to be increasingly cuts to social programs to do that military spending. So one of the things, if we have the forces to mobilize on this, that I want this will probably not till the fall, is printing a couple 100,000 stickers, kind of basic on the welfare, not warfare. Maybe not that slogan, but that basic theme, welfare, not warfare. And print a couple 100,000 stickers, do a tour that's really just a stop the military spending increases, put the money into social programs, and big picture framing of that's not an area where there is much activism, but I think we can, if we have the forces that are interested in helping out with the campaign, and it would be only associated with the leadership campaign. It would be a website that has general anti-military, pro-social spending, anti-NATO kind of stuff. Um, Anyways, that's the other kind of big picture political kind of campaigning messaging that I'd like to do in the fall on this. We'll see where things go. But as of now, just one thing to say on the NDP leadership campaign, if they do block me from running, if they try to vet me out, the plan is to just fight that in every different legal way and fight that in every different media way and to continue campaigning, to just
Hmm.
act like that's illegitimate. It's up to the members to decide, and we are going to move forward. And anyway, so that like I've some discussions I had I'm kind of wrapping my head around that now the NDP convention is at the end of March. So increasingly, I'm seeing this now is going to be 8 months rather than just 2 months, thinking there's a decent chance they're going to exclude me. But now I'm saying kind of no matter what, so long as the people into continuing to fight, I'm going to continue fight right until the end, even if they try to come up with some legal justification to exclude. Anyways, that's just a little bit of an aside. So that fits into a little bit of my thinking with regards to campaigns. I'd like to use this campaign, this leadership campaign, as a way to get out there on the military spending issue, which I think is starting to bubble. And for some element of campaign leadership campaign purposes, but mostly for ideological and political reasons, to come out with the hard welfare, not warfare. I don't know if we straight up, Canada out of NATO, but like, clearly criticizing NATO, whether that's, right in the center of the slogan or just, indirect or secondary slogan. I don't, that's to be decided. But with that kind of positioning, and that would necessitate, of course, a cross-country tour, maybe 30, 40 events across the country. Like I said, hundreds of thousands of stickers, posters. I mean, just to really try to give a big campaign, maybe try to get some unions into who are facing cutbacks because of this, get them part of it, and really just a serious national campaign around anti-militarism, which is desperately needed. And I think maybe the leadership campaign can be the right vehicle to make that big and a success.
And do you have people like people who are have expertise on real internal domestic things that don't have anything to do with sort of foreign policy and militarism who are helping you to see if there are any particular issues that can also grasp on their one or two and make them a central part of your campaign?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think that where there is a policy committee, and there are obviously people, Mike Pellicek, who's former president of Canadian Union of Postal Workers. He's leading up the communications committee, so he obviously knows that issue and other union working class kind of issues very well. There's a policy committee writing policy, and yeah, so the plan is to have public positions on not just foreign policy, whatever. The I don't know, is it the 100 most important policy issues of the day? Is it 50? I don't know, but very extensive. The Socialist Caucus already has policy positions on a lot of these things, and some of it would just sort of echo that, and some of it would go in slightly different directions. But yeah, definitely a full policy kind of certainly much more than the NDP would do in a usual election. We will be releasing.
Okay, go ahead, Yuri.
Thanks, Laura, and thanks for all you. Yeah, thanks. Jesus, sorry. Thanks for all you're doing. I hope that all goes very well for the campaign, and I'll try to organize an interview with you on 1+1 to even talk about some different policy stuff sometime after I get back from traveling. Somebody in the chat, Sally, wanted to ask, what is the time frame for the NCP leadership convention?
The convention is March 26th. So the voting and stuff all the specifics have not been completely laid out, but the voting is going to be online. Uh, uh, and as I understand it, and it all culminates around the convention in Winnipeg, which is on March 26th.
All right, and the journalist whose name you were blanking out, Scott Taylor of Esprit
Yeah.
de Corps, and the other far right and the far right junk journalist that you were blanking out, I believe, is Brian Lilly of one of Post Media's waste of ink papers, the Toronto Sun.
Yeah, it's not actually Lily. It's another Brian at the Toronto Sun. But I should also just state that officially the campaign hasn't started. The NDP campaign doesn't officially start till sometime in
Mm-hmm.
September, and we don't even know the exact date in September. We don't know if it's it could be September 20th or late in September or early September. So as of now, there is no official campaign. Just to yeah.
Okay, so you
And
don't
my
have
and,
okay. Well, go ahead, Yuri. Go ahead.
no, you first, Laura.
Well, I was just gonna say, so then you don't have a website for your campaign because there isn't technically a campaign
Oh
yet.
no, no, there is a website. Yeah,
Right.
Eve for NDP leader. It's not
Oh,
much up there right now. There's the campaign kit and the volunteer some photos and stuff and link to the Socialist Caucus website and there's a campaign kit of things people can do right now, and like I said, more things are going to be put into that campaign kit, and then there's the sign up sheet to either get on to basically to volunteer to get on a committee or to volunteer in one way or another. And that like I said, more I don't know an exact number, but more than 150 have already signed up for that. And lots of people have been taking images from the toolkit and sharing on social media and whatnot.
okay, go ahead.
And then very quickly, my question is because speaking of far right influencers and Zionist influencers, you're never going to believe this. I didn't get the chance to read this article yet, but apparently, uh, Israel is paying far right bigots and who are not really who are not really for Israel and think that Israel is controlling the US and so forth. So they're paying these sort of like far right influencers, these sort of like wannabe Alex Jones types to come to Israel, have a great time in Israel, and then go back home to tell people how Israel is wonderful, how Israel is the model that such and such a place should be, and that everybody should, be continuing to support Israel. And I'm curious your response on that. Yeah.
That doesn't surprise me at all. I'm not aware of the specific article you're referring to, but that doesn't surprise me at all. Obviously, there's a very extensive efforts in influencing all kinds of different social media and whatever. There's all these bot campaigns, and no doubt there's what the number is in the hundreds of millions of dollars being spent by the Israeli government to this stuff. And then there's also, of course, all kinds of stuff that's not necessarily directly the Israeli government, but different sort of pro-Israel forces within Canada, the US, or elsewhere doing that sort of in conjunction or indirectly in conjunction with the Israeli government. So yeah, no doubt.
Okay, Blair.
Awful.
Okay, go ahead, Blair.
Hey, Eve. Hope you're doing well. I know you got a lot on your plate right now. Just one little note before I ask my question. When you go on your speaking tour, I'm super down to help you organize events in every single province. I have contacts who would be interested in your campaign in Prince Edward Island, New Brunswick, and Nova Scotia as well. So just that as a little note. Any idea when you'll be doing your speaking tour? Will it be in different like little pockets or
Yeah, well, right now, there's kind of plans in the works for a big Zoom launch kind of thing, maybe towards mid to late August. And then
Yep.
the idea would be to do some sort of big launch in Toronto in like mid-September-ish, and then
Okay.
maybe a Montreal and Vancouver one as well, kind of similar time. Um, and so I would think realistically, if we're going to do like it'd be probably sometime October, November.
Yeah.
Would probably be the time frame. But the
Okay.
the ideal from my standpoint is that if you were able to sign up with the on the volunteer sheet on the website
Yeah,
and
I did. I did.
okay, yeah, and
Yeah.
communicate that to the tour person, the person in charge of the tour,
Yep.
and then
Cool.
that would be, so we can figure that out.
Yep. And just a little side note, question. Well, kind of just a point, I guess. I guess you're probably already thinking about what media appearances you want to make, both like mostly on podcasts, I would assume. I'm just like, for example, Steve Boots might be okay. I don't love the Rational National that much, but it would be a decent platform with a lot of Canadian viewers to maybe see about getting on there. The Breach also has a smaller podcast, but would be good probably too. Just wondering if you'd be willing to do like some more American oriented podcasts that still have like a lot of Canadian listeners, like Useful Idiots, for example, Chris Hedges, some stuff like this.
As a general rule, I'm into doing like I'm open. I'll do kind of almost all different interviews. I'm pretty try to be as
Yeah.
open as possible. So if you have contacts in any of these places, if you could just go,
Yep.
contact, you.
I have a little contacts with that. I mean, you probably know Aaron Monte a little bit. I mean, you probably have a little in to be on Useful Idiots maybe at some point.
Yeah, we actually talked in the meeting today. We talked about that as a possibility of something to as on the list of possibilities. Yeah, I obviously know Aaron. I was friends with him back in high school, and then we in the student union together. And I just saw him in Oslo. So that is something that probably at some point I'll ask him. They tend not to be very into Canadian, right? It's all these things. All these media tend to be very US, but it's something I will probably try to pursue.
Okay, and we have one last question from John. Go ahead, John.
Hey, Eve, I did volunteer, put my our hand up for the policy stuff around surveillance and privacy, if that's of any interest to you. But uh, uh, I love the idea of a speaking tour, and I don't think it matters if you get vetted out. You may even do better if you have an anti-campaign leadership speaking tour. You could probably do really well in raising awareness and organizing, movement organizing, and solidarity work either way. So there you go.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it would be interesting to see how that would play out. So
Okay.
Take
Thank-
care, brother.
Thanks, Eve. I think we can let you go.
thanks everyone. Take care. Have a good
Thank you.